Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to another edition of Beef, Bacon, and Eggs on Islam for Europeans. And with us, we have my good friend, Brother Asad Patel. He is an Imam in Gastonia, North Carolina. How are you doing today, Brother Asad? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing well. And in proper fashion, Robert's link for beef, bacon, and eggs ended up in spam. So I had to find it out of there. But alhamdulillah, I'm doing well.
Alhamdulillah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, well, spam is haram, unfortunately, but halal beef bacon is perfectly fine. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I know I had you on the show with Abdurrahman from my looking at the post discussion on my interview with Edward Dutton.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun.
I think that was a good discussion as well.
Yeah, you saw me getting blasted. I actually didn't see all the comments of all of the people calling me a crypto and everything, so I couldn't adjust how I was responding to the questions. But you were probably seeing like a mix of wow, this guy is based, and this guy is yeah, he hates.
I mean, there were a lot of opinions on you, just I guess being confused.
I think it was the outfit.
Yeah,
Was
the pirate outfit. That's what it was.
Yeah, the pirate outfit. Gosh.
I mean, it goes to show, not to deviate off the topic that you wanted to discuss, but it goes to show that even amongst the European-based crowd, a lot of people don't know their own history. That's why they'll say things like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know it's and it's it's a they're a very tough nut to crack. But when I look at the likes to dislikes ratio, it was like 54 likes, 34 dislikes. I'm just like, okay, so hopefully, inshallah, we made a positive impact. And actually, some people actually asked me questions about Islam later on. So alhamdulillah, it was good. I just kind of wish that the mainstream Dawa crowd knew about this group, but sometimes I wish I don't either. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's our dawa efforts and our dawa crowd are a very confusing bunch, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to get into that later or if you
We'll
don't
see.
mind.
We'll see.
Okay,
Can you hear me
inshallah.
fine now? Am I talking loud enough?
Yeah, your voice is a little bit soft, but
Okay.
what I'll do, Asa, is I'll give you the microphone, and if you wanted to talk about, kind of a bit about your origin story or your early life, learning, doing your Islamic scholarship or however you'd like to start
No,
that.
I don't. I don't have an early Islamic scholarship story.
Okay.
What's it called? Most of my studies, or as little as they've been, have been sitting with a local scholar.
Okay.
More so than going the traditional path.
Hmm.
And one thing which I'll clarify for a lot of people is if somebody is an imam, that generally doesn't mean they may be a resident scholar. They may just be the person who's the most learned in the community, or the person who has the best recitation possibly, or the person who's able to handle certain issues or affairs the best. So I mean, I think that should be clarified because a lot of times the imams that we have in communities, they may not even be scholars, and people will come ask them questions, and they'll even give answers, even though they shouldn't, but they will give answers because sometimes a position of authority gets to you and you think you should be giving answers that you shouldn't. And that's in any case.
I have seen that before, yeah, both with imams and also with non-religious positions and in business
Yeah.
and whatnot. So, but yeah, I mean, you're in Gastonia, North Carolina. Like, I guess a lot of Muslims who are not, who aren't living in the Southern U.S. Who are not from the Southern U.S. They might have some preconceived ideas about,
Yeah.
being an Islamic community in the South. Generally, like, what's the Muslim community's experience been like, with the general population in Gastonia?
So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My father came here in the 1970s. Early mid 1970s. There's been Muslim people here since before then. And generally speaking, most people don't Now they know, but before when my father first came, most people didn't really know what a Muslim was like that. They had heard something, they saw some movies, things like that, but they really didn't know what a Muslim actually was. So now a lot of people they know what Muslims are. It's very different. Most people know what a Muslim is, but they don't know what a Muslim believes. And we really, have to focus and work on that from a dawah perspective, just to let people know what a Muslim is. Like I think I told you, I had a preacher. It was a female preacher from, a different, they have different denominations. She was an assistant preacher at a Southern Baptist church. So I asked her, I was like, what is the difference between a Baptist and a Southern Baptist? And her first answer was, I don't know. And she was like, I knew you were going to ask me that question. It would be best that you talk with the head preacher of the church. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, is it not good enough? And, that you can give me the answer. And she's like, I don't know the answer. And then we had a few more conversations talking about Islam. And she honestly didn't know much about Islam. And, we got into the Bible and the Quran. And she was, couldn't really defend the Bible per se. And I think I told you this via text. And these sorts of conversations do need to happen. Obviously, you have to have some knowledge and some education. You can't go in blind. You go in blind, you'll get obliterated. You may not lose your faith. Many people would. You may not lose your faith. You may start doubting things, or either you'll put a bad example out for the person who you're talking to. But Gastronia is a smaller town. Um, I think now we have like 60,000 people here. It wasn't the case before. A lot of influx of people coming here. The part of town I live in, there's actually, I won't say a lot of Muslims, but every time you go to the grocery stores here, you'll meet somebody or you'll see a sister with a hijab on. My cousin, she was the valedictorian of her high school. She gave her, what's it called, her speech in a hijab. And I always joke. I'm like, I know you won't like this joke, but I always joke. I was like, this is the first emirate we established in the South. Um,
Oh, that's funny. That's
what's it called? But no, we're just normal Muslims. Most of the Muslims who live here, they own businesses, small businesses, a tire shop, a cell phone shop, a car dealership, things like this. Very, very small, very normal businesses, very normal people who just fit into society, honestly. Is there anything else you wanted to ask in regards to that? Maybe I didn't cover it.
I mean, it's when I think people think of the South, they think it as like like it's just like this like gun-toting, Confederate flag waving,
I mean, so I'm closer to the city. We're closer to the city. Our town's closer to the city. Now, the further you get deep, you get into like places like, you go to South Carolina, you'll be in Blacksburg, South Carolina, you will see the Confederate flag a lot. You drive down about 6 miles down this way, South Carolina, North Carolina border, you will see a huge Confederate flag. You go down like 20 miles up the road, or sorry, I said down and then up. But that's very normal in the South, where people will say you go down, but you're actually going up. Um, you go down about 15 miles, there's a huge Confederate flag. They're all over the place, and they don't really bother us. A lot of the times, the white people here, the people who have love of the Confederate flag will, they'll tell us their story of why they love the Confederate flag so much, and it really doesn't bother us. Like it really doesn't. Like for the most part, most Muslims they have friends who have Confederate flags on their trucks and stuff, and it really doesn't. I know a lot of people may watch this, if many people watch it, but they'll be like, "Oh my God, Confederate flag! It doesn't bother them. The history it carries." I'm like, look, it's been like 150 years since the what's it called, the Confederacy, the war happened, and it's really not bothering us at this point because they're not holding any sort of grudges against us. They come into our businesses, they talk with us respectfully, and we just these are things we just like, okay, like this is something that's from their past, and they're just holding on to it, clinging on to it. We're not gonna let this bother us. But as far as the gun toting goes, yes, there's no, I'm not going to say everybody, but a lot of people have guns here. And those don't bother us either because that's very normal here. People aren't pointing a gun in my face. They'll walk into the Walmart, they'll have a gun in their hands, and it doesn't bother us. That's just the way it is. It's like, why should it bother me? There's no reason for it to bother me.
Yeah. What about like for masjid security? Like, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but in general, would you say that masjids have like there's a brother there, with a registered firearm and for security purposes? Because I mean, like, you don't know. I mean, it's also and in Canada, we have this complete deterrence to guns. It's the exact opposite, at
Yeah.
least in southwestern Ontario. Like once you
So
get,
so a few years ago, we got some threats at our masjid, from an individual. We have we actually have a good relationship with the local police department, a very good relationship. So when we got those threats, we were actually having an open house where
mm,
we were inviting church and synagogue leaders. This was something I put together.
mm,
We had, many people came. The mayor was supposed to come, but then when we got threats from this white individual, the mayor decided not to come. Um, you know, he was threatening the masjid and stuff like that before this event. He wasn't just threatening the event; he was threatening before. Suddenly, the police got his information. They straightened him out. They said, "Look, we're gonna be there. You show up, you're gonna go straight to jail. You may end up in jail for a long time. This and that." He didn't show up. He didn't threaten us for a long time. Then he started threatening us again. It's just they weren't serious threats, but you always take a threat as a threat. Um, you know, so at that time we got good relationship with the police, but we didn't really use the police like that. If anything came up, we'd let them know. But then when New Zealand happened, then after that we started using the police. So every Juma and every Tarawih we have police at the masjid. They you know they Eid we have police at the masjid. They case out the whole property first before they start. They make sure there's nobody hiding or anything like that. And then they just sit at the doors. Like, there's one sitting at the edge of the property and there's one sitting at the other edge of the property. If anybody suspicious comes in, they do ask them, why are you here? We've had private security in the past where we've had Muslim brothers with guns. We once hired a guy. He's very well known in the area. He walks around with the AK. He's registered. And generally speaking, one of the African American masajid in our area, they're very serious about security. They have brothers who they have actual security task force. They have meetings. They have meetings with the community. They tell them what the actual threats are. Right now in New Jersey, in the last week, there's 3 masajid where there was some nationalist groups or somebody driving around with trucks, which had some pretty disturbing messages on them. So we're always on the watch out. Those messages are shared in the greater community. The Charlotte Masjid where I work at now, over there we have for Juma, every Juma we have police. Big events we have police. Um, there's some Muslim officers on the force, so they just come and I don't even know if they charge the masjid or not. But generally speaking, most of the masajid either have hired security, in-house security, or police security. Like there's brothers at the masjid who have guns that, if any time
yeah,
anything happens, we're ready. The congregation isn't like, oh wow, what's gonna happen? Our masjid, our doors are bulletproof metal doors at one masjid. And I was the one who installed those doors, like not personally, but I was the one who ordered the job. So and our windows, and I don't want to make it sound like we have a Fort Knox masjid, but our windows are like double or triple pane or something like somebody has shot something through it and it didn't come through many years ago. And I don't think it was they were trying to shoot the masjid. I think it was just somebody hunting or something because there's a lot of woods behind, and it was just one of those stray bullets. So guns are a big culture
yeah,
here, and it doesn't really bother us for the most part.
yeah. Alhamdulillah. Oh, also some pretty important questions about well, I mean, just you mentioned the African American masjid around, like the Muslim community in the United States is, compared to Canada, where it's the most of the Muslims here have just very recently moved here. The Muslim communities in the States are very diverse. You
Yes.
have the African American Muslims who've been there for, they were the flag bearers of Islam for centuries.
Yeah.
They may have a totally different, they definitely have a totally different perspective on the Confederate flag.
Yes. 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 Yes.
But there are a lot of um, what's like the breakdown of like the I guess the demographics of the Muslim community in in North Carolina and where you are, Asad, like
Where
percentage
I
wise.
am, obviously, majority actually is I think Middle Eastern Arab. Obviously, the thing about it is the way we have the breakdowns is it itself is very concerning and very disturbing sometimes, where we pile all the Arabs into one group where they're very different. Just because they basically speak a very similar language, because the Arabic of Tunisia is much different than the Arabic of Egypt,
Mm.
and the Arabic of Egypt is, you know, different than the Arabic of Yemen.
Yeah.
But generally, the majority of the people here, I feel like, are from Arab origin. And then we have, a big, Desi, Southeast Asian, Pakistani, Indian, slight bit of Bengali community, and then obviously we have a Somalian crowd, and then we do have the African Americans here, but the majority of the Muslims in the area who are active at the masajid, due to one reason or another, or no, sorry, not active. The ones who run the masajid are generally ethnic, like either Arab or Pakistani.
Okay.
That's generally the breakdown. There's actually a decent population of Indian Muslims here as well,
Okay.
but that's generally what it is. We do have a very small sliver of European-based Muslims. It's not big. Obviously, one of the imams of the Masajid, John, he is from Oklahoma.
Mm.
So the United States kind of weird, where the South goes like so
Yeah.
it goes like this. So the South goes all the way out west. So he's
Mhm.
there's the Southeast and the Southwest. So he's from the Southwest. He's a good guy, mashallah, very good, very hardworking. A lot of people respect him. So we have a smaller, sort of white Muslim population, but it is here. Most of them, unfortunately, do struggle a lot, and it's for reasons which you've discussed and I've discussed with you. Just trying to find that sense of community, trying to get their family to understand that Islam is not a religion of Saracens, things like this.
Yeah, it's a different type of struggle. I mean, but we also, and that's what we focus on at Islam for Europeans. But we also want to better understand I guess these challenges and struggles and accomplishments of people born into a Muslim family, and what the challenges that their communities face as well. So I mean, it's sometimes we don't highlight it because we haven't lived that experience. So I mean, yeah, I mean, how is it like growing up raising a Muslim family in Gastonia? Like, what are some of the challenges that you're facing?
So obviously on a national level, some of the concerns, obviously, what we have, coming from a religious background, myself and my wife, the concerns which we have obviously are more national. Locally speaking, those concerns are coming up, but they're not major. But obviously, one of the most major ones, which is a personal struggle, is making sure our children are gonna, obviously they're born Muslim. Okay, that's fine. First 3 5 years, it's fine. After that, I want to make sure my kids stay Muslim.
Hmm.
And since the infrastructure hasn't been properly built out, for proper Islamic schools, proper Islamic education, there's two Muslim schools which run very beautifully and they're very good, but there's not enough Islamic schools. There's not enough Islamic environment. There's not madrasas, things like that here. That is a huge concern for us. We want to make sure our kids have a proper Islamic environment. That's not to say that their communications with non-Muslims should be cut off. It's a thing that they should have more communication with Muslims. Right now, where it stands at, maybe they'll meet Muslims like 10% of the week. We want it to be at least 50-50. So, they get, at least. So they get a proper, environment. So they
Hmm.
know that they're Muslim and they feel comfortable being Muslim around other Muslim people. Um, and that's one of the struggles which a lot of Muslims have had, is trying to figure out who they are. Because a lot of guys who went to school with me or after me, they were really confused because they went to school and their parents expected them to be good American boys and girls when they went to school. A lot of their sisters didn't wear hijab because of, it's, you stood out, things like that. Now a lot of the sisters do wear hijab when they go to school. The younger sisters, all of my cousins, female cousins, they all wear hijab when they go to school. Alhamdulillah, and they don't feel uncomfortable. Their friends make them feel comfortable. There's lot more understanding now. But before, it was a bit more challenging. But even then, just wearing the hijab or just having a beard, it is only a small part. A lot of it is inside of the head. So I want to make sure my kids have that element where they feel comfortable being Muslims. And there's no guarantee of that ever. There was actually I watched a movie yesterday night, and I'm not going to take the name. And the reason I watched the movie was because there was a lot of emphasis. Oh, it's about Muslims and Islam. And the main character is like, he's not a very model Muslim. And one of the things which he said, which actually made a lot of sense for a lot of people who I deal with and I see, is he's like, I don't really know who I am, and I'm trying to figure out my path. And when I figure it out, I'll let you know. I don't want my kids to have to figure out their path like that. I want them to know and choose to be good Muslims. And that's one of the main scares. The other scares obviously is things like, and I'm sure, most Muslims don't really turn to Christianity unless of course they're really confused. Most Muslims generally turn to like non-religionism. I don't want them to do that. And then obviously the other big scares are, things like I won't say them. Some of them I won't say. Other things are just, trying to keep them safe. I don't want them to go to school and end up being a school shooting. Things like this. It's really scary. There's just so much out there, and you know what it is? It's the fear of the unknown, that what could happen. And I'm not trying to be some sort of a guy who's trying to, conspiracy theorist. Oh my God, fluoride toothpaste has, nanochips, and that's why they're making us use it so they can track us from space or anything like that. No, it's like real concerns. And things like in Detroit and Dearborn a few weeks ago, where they had those big rallies against having sexual materials in schools, things like that. That I don't want my kids exposed to stuff like that. They're still young, but my son goes to school, and he's going to be in elementary school in like next year or something. I don't want him exposed to stuff like that.
Yeah, I could see the appeal of Islamic schools. I mean, like to try to protect them from any and all things that could be coming at them. And this is in 2022. I mean, who knows what could come out of the woodwork, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now that our kids are going to be exposed to. But like you said, you can't build Islamic schools for everybody. But thinking outside the box, like, me, myself, like, I part-time, I did trivia shows, right?
Yeah.
And I did it for a cafe in Toronto that didn't sell alcohol. But here in London, there's no place to, for me to do my trivia shows that don't serve alcohol. So I mean, like, and then you can't go to the Muslim community and say, hey, like, why don't you pay me and I'll do a trivia tournament? They're going to be like, get out of here. So I mean, like, we have to think outside of the box and provide, like spaces and programs and sporting leagues, that at least don't have alcohol. So
and we are working on those things here. These are some of the initiatives that I'm working on. The progress is slow. And the reason the progress is slow is a lot of people, they think, I've seen this in the South, and this is all over the United States. It's not just in the South. In the Muslim community, especially the ethnic Muslim community, people think that their kids are safe. Nothing's going to happen to them. I made them read Quran one time, and they finished it with some sheikh or maybe online now, and they know that they're Muslim and they're good. And then they go off to college and they come home with please excuse me, they come home with Emily or Taylor or somebody like that, and their parents are upset, and they're like, oh, how could you do this to us, and this and that, and they're like, what did I do wrong? So, oh, you didn't marry from a Pakistani perspective, I'm Pakistani, you didn't marry a girl who's Pakistani, or you didn't find a girl who's Pakistani, why did you have to bring this white girl home? And like, that's what they saw their whole life. You giving them that 5% of Islam or 10% of Islam definitely wasn't enough. You had to let them know. You didn't break anything down for them. You imagined that they would know because they should know better. That knowing better or expecting somebody to know better and letting them know what to expect are two completely different things. And I actually got a call last week from a brother, and he's like, I need you, because I give Jum'ahs about I have a book which I haven't completed. Inshallah, it'll be complete sometime in the next few years. It's not hard to finish. I have all the content. It's just I need to finish it. It's on the problem with Muslim Desi marriages. One of the chapters is Muslim Pakistani guys marrying outside of the religion. Um, and the thing about it is it's not really emphasized, it's not really talked about. It's just an understood taboo that, oh, our son won't marry somebody who's not. Specifically, the scare is our son will end up marrying somebody who's white or black. That's a majority of the time, that's the scare. More so white, because that's a majority of the time what Pakistani Muslim guys end up marrying is white girls, if they're marrying outside of the culture, or religion, I guess. And one of the things which people have to understand is we live in the South, especially for the South. And this guy called me. He's like, "Hey, we need to talk about this. A lot of our Muslim Pakistani guys, they're marrying outside of the culture and religion. They're marrying white girls, and their parents aren't happy." And I'm like, they spend 95% of their time from the age of 15 till the age of 25 in the company of white guys and white girls. And the parents think it's good. Oh, our son's just getting an education. He's going to be a successful engineer. He's going to be a successful doctor. He's going to be a successful PhD. The only thing he has a PhD in is looking at white girls.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sorry.
Yep. And a lot of times these white girls, or more rarely white guys, they will convert to Islam. Sometimes sincerely, they might be totally sincere.
Yeah, but you have to be a good Muslim to show them Islam.
And a lot of these marriages end in divorce because
they do.
Yeah, because a lot of these, if they're obviously, if this Pakistani guy or girl is dating a non-Muslim white or black guy or girl, they're not religious to begin with.
Yeah.
Right. And the convert may be very sincere and want to practice everything. So there's a mismatch in religiosity right off the bat. There's a mismatch in culture right off the bat. And the other perspective that I hear from converts is, oh, well, that's racist that you're not letting us marry into a Pakistani family. But I've been Muslim for 19 years, and I'm sure you'll agree with me with this, Asad, is that even between different Muslim subcultures, there are vast differences that people don't realize until they get into it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And one of the things about it, look, there's nothing wrong with marrying, a convert, or marrying somebody,
right? It's not wrong. Yeah.
A person who's, say people of the book or something. But if you're not practicing, and they're not practicing at all, I mean, what are you really doing? Like, what? I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, but if you're not practicing, and she does become Muslim, let's say you marry a non-Muslim girl, a white girl, for example, you go to college with her, you end up marrying her, you've dated her, you slept with her. Now, when she becomes Muslim, she says, okay, fine, let me read about Islam. She gets convinced, okay, somehow. She gets convinced. Now, when she becomes Muslim, she's going to be like, you were living a life of hypocrisy. You were dating me. You were sleeping with me. You were taking me out, on vacations. What was all of that? That's against your religion. What kind of a Muslim are you? And that would create a sense of distrust in the sister.
Yeah.
That why should I be married to this guy? Because he's not a good Muslim himself. I should go find somebody who's a good Muslim now. And that's a problem. Because they'll see it. And and most of the time, it ends up in divorce, like you said, because even if she becomes Muslim, or even if she's not Muslim, and then you have to understand, being a white Muslim comes with a lot of challenges, and this. I'm not telling you, but to the people listening or watching, like becoming a white Muslim through this journey is also going to carry a lot of trauma, because now you're going to be traumatized that I was basically taken or had for the past 5-6 years, that this guy dated me. He basically duped me, and now I'm a Muslim. I don't even know if this religion is true anymore because this guy isn't practicing it.
Yeah.
Their iman might have been really high, but now it's not because of this person. And we discuss this all the time, even amongst ourselves. Like, I talk with imams and I talk with shuyukh and stuff like that. We discuss this. We're like, this is bad for converts, because the guys and girls who are converting them aren't even good Muslims. The only reason they're converting them is so they can marry them. So any chance they had at being good Muslims goes out the door because of the way the Muslims act. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to put Muslims down, but that's the truth.
Well, I mean, and then there's another factor here that is even deeper than this, Asad, is that, when you look at other communities in the West that converted to Islam as a group, whether that's the African American Muslims or the Tzotzil Muslims in Chiapas, Mexico. They converted as a group, and even though their communities were originally had been opposed to it, over time, they allowed to coalesce into this vibrant community, where if you convert to Islam, you may already have an aunt or an uncle or a brother or a sister or a mother or a father who's already Muslim, and it's already embedded in the culture, so it's not that big of a shock, to you and your family. But Europe, and by extension, the Western outpost countries like Canada, United States, New Zealand, the Anglosphere, we've been the historical enemy or adversary of the Muslims for centuries, and us converting to Islam, our communities would be so opposed to it, or even if they're not opposed to it, think that it's so strange. And on top of that, we're very individualistic people. We never think of coalescing into a group where we can take care of each other's needs. Converts have no other choice but to try to assimilate into existent Muslim sub-communities who have a lot of challenges on their own already. So, it's like the layers of an onion, it's very, all these factors interplay with each other. So I wouldn't put all the blame on Muslim communities. Like I had a couple weeks ago, we had a meeting, and what to do with converts and stuff. And, we said flat out that, convert programs for Western mosques have by and large failed. Like they've been a failure. Right. And, the brother was very distraught by that. He's like, I feel like a pain in my heart that all these convert programs have failed. And just like, look, it's not your fault, because even the converts themselves didn't understand all of these issues. It took me several years, for us to come to these to these understandings. Right. So I think, you mentioned Emily and Taylor. We want a situation where it's a lot easier for Emily to marry Taylor and convert to Islam, so they already have like an existent sub-community of Muslims. So, I can understand a lot of these Pakistani brothers and sisters want to, marry a white girl or a white guy, because, there's a lot of allure to it. We're going to climb up the social ladder, and, they're already, there's all this freedom and alcohol and drugs and smoking and, being in with a cool crowd. So, I mean, like, there's a lot of allure to it as well. So, and they're probably, their families were probably strict and went overboard with their strictness. And
no, usually you don't see it as much you do see a little bit of it, like, as we say in Urdu, we call it baghi, where people become desperate and they run away from what they've been stuck in.
Yeah.
It's not so much in that, it's more so you see it in this culturally taboo families where they're not really religious, where there's a sense of hypocrisy, where they're not really religious, but they will have certain things which are off limits. Like, you can't do this. Like, okay, you can go have McDonald's French fries. You can go have a burger. All of that is fine. You can hang out with your non-Muslim friends. That's fine. Just don't date. And, at this point, and I'm not equating eating a burger and fries and hanging out with white friends with marrying somebody, but they're also like, look, you don't have to go to the mosque. You don't have to, just make sure you pray once in a while. Just hold on to the string of Islam. And I was listening to a speech. There's a very famous scholar from Pakistan. His name is Mufti Taqi Uthmani. He has speeches in Urdu, English, and Arabic. He's an older scholar. He's, I believe, in his late 70s. His brother just passed away. And he came to the United States in the late 80s. In 88, the year I was born, he came to the United States. And he came and he was invited to a Muslim conference. And when he came to this Muslim conference, he said, I was completely overwhelmed by what I saw. A lot of the stuff, which is normal now, he's like, at that time, it still wasn't normal in the Muslim community. He's like, I saw men and women sitting side by side. He's like, okay, that's fine. He's like, it's not good, it's fine. He's like, I saw that. He's like, but then I saw that the Muslim women were not wearing proper clothing. He's like, they were not dressed properly. They were wearing very morally improper clothing. And then he's like, then when I was talking with the leader of the conference, we had started having a conversation. And he's like, because they made an announcement that if anybody wants to eat halal food, we don't have halal food here, just eat some fish. And he's like, I was deeply concerned, and I spoke with him that you guys are having a Muslim conference, but there doesn't seem to be too much, aside from the talks, too much Islamic stuff going on. So he's like, look, Sheikh, we're just trying to make sure that our kids hold on to the string of Islam, and that's it. And he's like, we're not trying to push more than that because we don't know if we can. And generally speaking, you're seeing that in a lot of Muslim families where either the kids, they become non-religious, they become atheistic or agnostic, or either, they become a bit like, rebellious, and they'll go do one or two
Yeah.
things. Like they'll maybe date for a little bit and then come back to their senses, or either they'll go out and marry somebody who's a non-Muslim and try to fit back into the family, which is not easy because our people, not blaming the white people or the black people or the Hispanic people, our people don't make it easy to fit in. There's many stories where guys married non-Muslim girls. The girls became Muslim, they got married, they became Muslim, they had kids, and the family is still trying to get the guy married overseas.
Wow.
Yeah, there's stories like that where these people have multiple children and the family saying, no, no, this is not acceptable to us. You have to marry your cousin from Pakistan, or you have to marry somebody from Pakistani origin. You can't be married to this person. And this person's been Muslim now for 5, 6 years. They're practicing, the sisters, practicing wearing hijab, stuff like that. And they're just like, no, no, you still have to marry somebody. Obviously, from the guy's perspective, they go, you can still marry somebody else. So, for us to keep face. But like for the girls, they can't have multiple marriages.
Yeah.
Although there's some misguided people who are bringing up weird things, but they still can. Um, so that's not as much. But for the guys, people are still trying to do wacky things. And if a sister has become Muslim, you're a Muslim. What kind of hypocrisy is this? Let her practice. She's being a good wife. She's practicing. She's praying. She's teaching her kids about Islam. She's being a better Muslim than all the people in your house. Just chill out.
Yeah, easier said than done. I mean, it's very large problems, but I can understand the trying to get your kids to hold on to the string of Islam because it's tough. It's not easy being a fully practicing Muslim. I mean, especially in today's society, and I I can understand where the parents are coming from. That they're just trying to keep something with your children. But like I think we've definitely made progress compared to like 30, 40 years ago. Like I was a
Yeah, yeah.
Muslim back then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I was watching the movie and the guy's talking about, oh, well, my parents are trying to push 1400 years of culture onto me. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, this guy is a movie actor and he's born and raised in a Muslim household. But he says a lot of things which are not really Muslim. They're more like Pakistani Islam. And he's pushing them on a national stage. And I'm like, that's so bad. And he even says he's not Muslim anymore. And then in the movie, he's mixing culture and religion. And I'm like, I want to send an email to this guy. Like, at least get your stuff straight, man. You're making us look bad.
Oh my gosh. Like at least when like there's a Darul Uloom in Chatham here in
Yeah,
southwestern Ontario, and like it's very heavily culturally Pakistani, but
yeah.
there's still very practicing Muslims. I mean, they pray 5 times a day. It's a boarding school.
I know everybody there, so
Oh, you do? Oh,
yeah, I
it's
know the
awesome.
teachers. I know the teachers. I know the principal.
We you have to come here and meet us. I'm only an
Inshallah.
hour away from Chatham, so
Yeah, inshallah.
uh, uh, but um, yeah, I mean it's very culturally Pakistani. The food is
Yes.
super hot for iftar. There's no women there. I mean, like it's just, and they don't have open houses because it's a security issue because it's
Yeah,
a boarding
it's a
school.
school.
So I talked to the Imam about this, and I just said, look, that's great that you guys have this masjid here that you're teaching Islam and stuff, but this is just not conducive to spreading Islam to the greater public. And he's completely agree with me. He's just like, yeah, like our clothing is different, our food is different.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for us to reach out to the greater society. And he agreed with me actually that we should form our own like wolf packs as like converts. That way you can better give dawah to our people. But like that's an extreme example of like just being totally not on the same wavelength. But like I think it's I wouldn't get too down on like the Muslim community, especially the Pakistani Muslim community, because I
Hey,
think they,
I have to because I'm a Pakistani Muslim.
yeah, I know, and I should be harder on white Muslims myself as well. I
No,
mean,
no, the white converts or the European-based converts need a lot of help. I don't think right now is the time for nurture. For from the Muslim community and from the European Muslims who are already Muslims, it's a time for nurture because there's so many challenges out there. Like I honestly I feel bad just trying to convert now with all of the challenges that are coming up. It's unbelievable because not
yeah,
only are there challenges that a lot of most Christians in the United States aren't very Christian,
yeah,
but even then, they become more so defensive Christian. Not only do you have those challenges now you have political challenges, liberal challenges,
yeah,
feministic challenges. There's all sorts of challenges now just to become a Muslim. So I
yeah,
think we do need to be maybe somebody who's been Muslim for 5 to 10 years, being harder on them makes sense. Their iman is for the most part fortified, but somebody who's very new, we really have to be very nurturous. Otherwise, I don't know if they'll last because I was reading an article yesterday, not in preparation for this, just in general. I read a lot, and I was reading, and it was no, it was an article. It was something else I was reading. It was a small bit, and it was talking about how a lot of white converts leave Islam. And the person who was writing it was very misguided on why they leave Islam. Oh, they leave Islam because they don't like it anymore, or something like that. I think that's not generally the reason why they leave. It's because they don't like it or they don't find truth in it anymore. I was like, there's other reasons, and if you want to find out the reason, I didn't advertise this. I was like, if you want to find out the reasons, you can watch Islam for Europeans and find out why.
yeah,
But honestly speaking, this topic better than I do of why European-based or white converts leave Islam.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, like I think, part, I guess from the, well, I've said their names several times before already, so I'll just go on and say them. The Dilly and Roshan crowd, where there's a lot
Mm.
of anger and resentment, righteous anger, resentment towards, quote unquote, the West, or Western governments. That, we're not trying, when we talk about these issues, we're not trying to make it sound like the other issues of other Muslim communities aren't important. In fact,
Yeah.
it's the opposite. Like if we present these ideas as solutions, it's actually a win-win because it'll actually reduce Islamophobia, and you don't have to drain the Muslim community's resources on converts. You can concentrate more on your own issues. So I just want, I just to a certain extent, I kind of appreciate that brutal honesty. Like I would be, it would just be much better. I mean, I know Twitter can be like the cesspool of people's thoughts, but at the same time, like it really highlights the fact that uh, a lot of Muslims don't want to talk to our family members, and they don't want to enter into those non-Muslim spaces for various reasons. It may be fear or resentment or just reluctance, and vice versa. Our non-Muslim families, generally speaking, don't want to go to a mosque. Like they're terrified. So I mean, it's not the like the whole thing about being angry at white people, whatever. I mean, whatever. I mean, they can say whatever they want. I'm not
Look,
here to.
man, I was in a store yesterday, a friend of mine in a store with a bunch of, Southern people. It was perfectly fine. There's nothing for me to be concerned about. They're very nice people. And I was on the phone. I called my friend before I went, and his answering machine is like, completely Southern. Hey, you reached Scott. This sort of deep Southern accent. I can't even do it. It's too early in the morning. Um, what's it called? But he's like, man, that guy. He's like, he's a real Southerner. I was like, yeah. I was like, this guy, he's real. And I had spoken to him, and he's like Asad. He's like, I can't change my accent. He's like, I'm 61 years old. He's like, as much as I'd like to sometimes, he's like, I can't. I'm like, there's no reason for you to change your accent. I was like, the way we talk changes, every 10 to 15 miles anyway.
Yeah,
And he was understanding of that. But there's something, I generally don't wear a suit and tie. And the reason I don't wear a suit and tie, this is my personal feeling. I wear jeans, I wear a t-shirt, things like that. But I don't wear a suit and tie. And a lot of people, they're like, oh, why don't you wear a suit and tie? You should wear it. It's a nice dress and so on. And this is something I say. A lot of people may be turned off of this. It's like, I say I'm not a shill of the colonizer. It's like
yeah,
that's why I don't wear a suit and a tie. I was like, I'm okay with wearing jeans. I'm okay with it's very casual wear. But I feel like wearing a suit and tie, especially coming from like a Muslim official perspective, where I do imamat at masajid and mahafiz of the Quran. I have a little bit of religious knowledge, not much. But a lot of times I give talks on certain topics which I'm knowledgeable about. I don't think it's befitting of me to wear a suit and a tie and give a talk.
It's
Now,
funny.
if there's go
Yeah.
ahead.
It's funny because I could totally understand where you're coming from, especially the history of the call it the Raj and
Yeah,
Indian subcontinent. But the thing is, and I totally respect that you don't want to wear a suit and tie. But when you look at the African American Muslim community, like wearing a
yeah,
suit and tie is like, and the bow tie specifically
yeah.
has been part of their history.
Well,
So
there was a reason behind it and a good reason.
yeah,
And even if there was for example, John usually wears suits when he gives no, he fluctuates. He wears suits, he wears thobes, he wears different things. But if John wears a suit,
yeah,
not so much a tie. I'm not a big tie guy. I'm like tie is like corporate America. That's just a sign of corporations. If John wears a suit, I can respect that. Because John comes from a culture where a suit is seen as a very nice dress. I'm like, we don't. And we don't have to accept the suit as a sign of a nice dress because we do it at the expense of giving up our own nice dress. Why do we have to do that? You can wear both. Okay, that's fine. You want to do that. I won't. John wears a suit. I'm okay with that. Imam Khalil wears a suit. I'm totally down with that. Imam Khalil is African American
yeah,
scholar. Imam Khalid wears a suit. I'm fine with that. Imam Khalid doesn't even wear a tie. He's African American scholar, very well known, very good guy. These guys wear suits. I'm totally down with that. They come from a culture where suit is seen as a nice dress. It's
yeah,
like I don't, and I don't need to accept it as a nice dress for myself.
yeah.
If you want to wear it, it's fine, but don't force it upon me. A lot of people try to force it upon me. I'm not even joking. But like we were at a wedding recently, and everybody's wearing suits. How come you're not wearing a suit? And even my own
Wow.
relatives wearing suits. And I'm like, and I, I told him straight up, like I'm not a shill of the colonizer. And my other cousin was right there, and he's like, dang. He's like, I was like, I'm
Yeah,
not putting anybody down. I was like, I won't do it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's something very, it's. I think one of the amazing things about Islam is that, like, the biggest enemies of Islam will sometimes convert and
Yeah,
become part of the Muslims, and I think that is throughout our history. Whether you're talking about the Quraysh,
yeah,
Hind, uh, Omar radiallahu anhu, Vashi, all these Sahabi who used to be the total enemies of Islam, and even historically, like I was reading the Spread of Islam in the World by Thomas Walker Arnold. All these populations that are now Muslim, they
you
used
like
to
that book.
absolutely despise Islam. Like whether you're talking about the Persians or even the Afghans. Like
Yeah,
like you always had a large segment of the population that were totally against it. So there's this appeal of the, kind of like the enemies of Islam converting, and
yeah,
then they bring in aspects of their culture which are totally fine and halal.
yeah,
And it's funny because even the people who absolutely hated, uh, you know, that aspect of their, of these people, they suddenly all of a sudden like a switch flips, and it's suddenly the coolest thing in the world. Like I'll give you a perfect example. There's a video of this Israeli YouTuber. He's interviewing Palestinian Muslims living in Israel proper about
oh yeah, I've seen
Hajj.
that.
Like
Okay, yeah,
have you been on Hajj? And all these Muslims are speaking in Hebrew. Like, and they're using like even like Hebrew like terminology too. Like instead, like he'll saying like, have you been on Hajj yet? And the guy's like, oh, I want to go on Hajj. And instead of saying Inshallah, he said Bezrat Hashem, which is basically God willing in Hebrew.
yeah, yeah. I'm like, what?
But
What
if
is
you try to speak
what is
Hebrew in like
Robert talking now?
Gaza or the the West Bank, oh, you're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a YouTuber, Facebooker by the name of Nas Daily, who, he's been really pushing that sort of like pro-Israeli Palestinian agenda really hard
Well,
for the past like 5 years.
that's different.
Yeah,
But
but what I'm saying is he's very heavy on that. Like I'm Israeli, and I'm proud to be Israeli. And then he shows videos of him like being pushed down by like Israeli people on the street and stuff like that. I'm like,
uh,
okay, it's like that's pretty tough to defend that and then have that happen to you.
yeah, 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 it's true. It's true. But the other thing is that we talked about the challenges of white converts. I can't imagine how difficult it is for two particular groups. One is Jewish converts to Islam, specifically in Israel, and the other is Hindu converts to Islam. I don't know if you had
Hindu
any.
converts to Islam, man, that's tough.
Yeah.
Like their families, Hindu and Sikh converts in India, their families give them a hard time. They give the in-laws a hard time. They will destroy your life. They'll send the police after you until you leave the country.
Oof.
They will hound you. We have a relative who's a Sikh doctor. She married one of my uncles, like uncle through relation. Um, and you know, her father and her uncles, they're very like, religious and cultural Sikhs. They went to war with the family, and our family in India is very docile. They don't, they're very laid back. They would never fight. These people had to go into hiding until she could finally convince her family that leave them alone and leave me alone. I want to be a Muslim. So it's, and they're not even in the majority over there in India. Hindus are in the majority. So imagine marrying somebody, and this is why I saw a post by one of the brothers. I'm not going to take his name. He has a podcast, very famous. And he was talking about Shah Rukh Khan. And I sent you the video.
Yep.
Shah Rukh Khan went for Umrah, and he's like, oh, Shah Rukh Khan is, spoke about, his pro-Hindu ideologies many times. Why did they even allow him to come there? I'm like, you have to understand, the guy is trying to operate in an industry which is 90% Hindu. Not saying it's right, okay? I'm not saying working in the film industry and dancing with non-Muslim women or dancing with any women who are not your wife in public is right. But to operate in the Indian film industry, where a majority of the country is Hindu, majority of the people watching your videos and movies are Hindu, it's not easy.
No.
And then he has a Hindu wife. He has kids who he's raised really confusingly. They have Muslim names, but they've been raised, worshiping Allah and at the same time worshiping Hanuman and Ganesh and stuff like that, which is, this is clear shirk.
Yeah.
But, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He's a Muslim brother. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him and bless us all with hidayah. But at the end of the day, making such judgmental statements is not healthy because you don't know. He might end up in a higher level of Jannah. He might repent and end up in a higher level of Jannah than us. But making public statements like that and saying, he's been very pro-Hindu for a long time. Why did they even allow him? He's still a Muslim at the end of the day. He says he's Muslim. He's been on TV and he's defended the fact that he's Muslim. But on the other perspective, yes, him saying pro-Hindu things is not good. But he lives in a country where, there's 1.5 billion people or something, some ridiculous number, 1.3 billion people, and 1 billion of those are not Muslim. Yeah, he's going to say a few things. It's the effect of the environment. You can't even deny it. It's what was it? Michael Jordan, when they asked him, to speak out against conservatives, they say, hey, conservatives buy my shoes, Republicans buy my shoes too. So it's that whole perspective. If he's coming from a businessman's perspective, he's not going to say anything anti-Hindu. So much so that it's pathetic that Shah Rukh Khan doesn't even, when Muslims are persecuted, he doesn't say anything in defense of them. But because he knows, if God forbid he did, and from his perspective, he's like, oh, God forbid I said something, against the Indian government. Basically he could be, destroyed. Like his career and life would be destroyed. His son last year was caught up in a drug smuggling ring, and I don't know if his son was actually doing any of the drug smuggling. But the reason why it all went down bad for him is because at the end of the day, Shah Rukh Khan is Muslim, and they give him hell for 3 to 5 months. Like he was on the news every day. They were insulting him, humiliating him, just for the fact that he's a Muslim. Because there's many Hindus who are in the film industry in Bollywood who do drugs, who are known to peddle drugs, and who are known to smuggle drugs, but they don't get a hard time because they're Hindu. Shah Rukh Khan, at the end of the day, he's still Muslim. He's still our Muslim brother. Allah give him and give his hidayah. That's why he has such a hard time, because his name, he could have changed his name to like Babu Ram or something and just been like, look, I'm Hindu. But he didn't. He still has whatever, I don't know, he may be a better Muslim than I am, but he still has that Iman inside of him. That's why he's still Shah Rukh Khan.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's easy to be an armchair quarterback and just say, why aren't they doing A, B, C, and D? But we don't understand, like, what's going on in these people's personal lives, and the amount of scrutiny they're under, being in these in these kinds of positions.
Yeah.
I could think of another example, and that's, there's people some Muslims were criticizing, the fact that the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh, I forget her name, Sheikh,
Sheikh Hasina.
yeah, she has to have a good relationship, and someone say, why do they have why do they do this bootlicking with India? And then someone who was Bengali showed this Muslim guy who was a very well-known Muslim spokesperson, basically the map of Bangladesh, which is completely surrounded by India.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why. And again, no Muslim country is going to come to their aid if India were to attack Bangladesh.
I don't know if Bangladesh even has nuclear arms.
Right.
Pakistan acts a fool. It's because Pakistan knows it has the military strength to maybe not take on India, but to give them a pretty damn hard time.
Yeah.
But I don't think Bangladesh has that capability.
No, they're completely reliant on maintaining good relationships with Hind. So I mean, the way that it works out in realpolitik. I mean, you have to once you're in that situation, you understand what those problems are. And inshallah, we as Muslims, can come to better understandings about each other's specific situations and why they think a certain way. When I first converted to Islam, even in the first 5-10 years, I would have, heard a statement like, why did our son or daughter bring home, Emily or Taylor, and just be extremely offended. But after being Muslim for 19 years, I get it now. I totally understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
So, but let's talk about something a bit different, something completely different. Asad, your YouTube channel, Straight Path Podcast, which has some great Islamic content on it. What inspired you to create the podcast, and just give yourself a plug if people want to subscribe, which is criminally underrated. So go ahead.
It's not criminally underrated. It is the way it is. There's not a lot of emphasis from my end on propagating it like that. I've let it grow its natural life. But the reason behind the podcast, there was a few different reasons. One was it was during COVID. I was giving Islamic lessons. During the course of the Islamic lessons, one of the guys who was taking the class, who wasn't a Muslim, actually became Muslim. He was taking Quran classes, and he asked me a few questions. And the questions he asked me, the way I answered them, some people are like, "Oh, you're really harsh about them." He asked me about Bathsheba, the story of David and Bathsheba, and I was like, you have to understand the Bible. A lot of times it's like TMZ, and there's a lot of sort of sultry material in there, which is not even Christian. And the Muslim guys got angry at me. So the next morning, I called the preacher. He's a preacher in a very big church in the town, and I spoke with him. And he's at the end of the conversation, he's like, "I like your version of stories of the prophets better than the Christian version." And this was one of the inspirations. The other thing was I was giving these classes, and people were sort of like in and out, not really coming in properly. I was like, look, I want to make something which is long lasting and which can benefit my family and benefit my mother in memory of her. She had passed away a few years ago. Allah have mercy on her. Make something in memory of my mother and have something which is good content which people can benefit from for the rest of their lives. And the thing about it is there's a lot of Muslim podcasts out there, but I have a different perspective. I have a different way I do things. I was like, let me put my flavor on it. And I've been doing it. Alhamdulillah, I've had a lot of good guests on. I've had guests from many different backgrounds. I've had Deobandi scholars. I've had scholars who are not Deobandi. Deobandi being an area of India where people generally associate with.
Yep.
I've had popular people on. I've different things. There's actually a Nasheed artist who's in Canada right now, Brother Omar Isa. He is on the podcast. In a few weeks, you're going to have the AIM Salafi conference up in Toronto. Sheikh Osman, he's been on the podcast. And I've had a lot of people on, and they've spoke. All of them, they're good Muslims, and they speak good things. They all have different perspectives. That's all. And so I'm trying to give a religious Muslim perspective, and there's many other good religious Muslim podcasts out there. There's the One Past Brothers out in Australia who have a huge podcast. Then there's what is it called? The Freshly Grounded, which is a UK-based really good podcast. Really good podcast, and those are sort of inspirations for me as well to do better. Alhamdulillah, I've gotten some new material recently. New equipment recently. So gonna start in-person podcasting as well. There's some really good content on my channel as far as religion goes, personal stories goes, things like that. I interviewed a sheikh from Malawi, born and raised Malawian African guy, and he told, the struggles they have. And their struggles aren't so foreign from the struggles we have in the West. Same things is like drinking, partying, this lifestyle. Our Muslims here are struggling with the same things that your Muslims in the United States are struggling with. So, and I've made a lot of good connections. I met a lot of people who I never would have spoke with in my life. And now sometimes people recognize me, like Shuyukh who see me and they're like, "Oh, I've seen your podcast before." And it's kind of nice, but at the same time, it's kind of humbling that people know me. So that's the main thing is trying to propagate and create something that people can benefit from. And that's what a lot of people say is like your content may not be like the most popular, but the benefit you have is people will benefit from your content till even after you pass away. And I'm like, alhamdulillah, that's the main thing behind it.
Yeah, may Allah reward us for our humble efforts. I said on these our humble channels, and inshallah they can
I
get more
mean, yeah,
views and everything. And us, like us, so, like YouTube channels that have like less than 10K subs. We need to stick together and
yeah,
pump each other up, and hopefully inshallah become as big as the big names. But it's not the quantity, but the quality. And if Allah
absolutely.
subhanahu wa ta'ala guides a person, through us, the reward is unbelievably immense.
I mean,
Um, I know you have to go, brother Asad, but it was wonderful
yeah,
talking to you today.
yeah, it was.
Please subscribe to Asad's podcast, the Straight Path Podcast. My name is Robert from Islam for Europeans. This is Beef, Bacon, and Eggs. We're here every Saturday morning after Fajr with a different guest every week.
Inshallah.
Please subscribe to our channel, and that's
I
about it
hear
for
I
today.
hear you're having another Gastonia guy next week.
Yes, that's right. We're having Tyler on, inshallah, next Saturday. So it'll be good to get his perspective as well,
The
inshallah.
funny thing, I'll just mention this much. I actually went to school with Tyler's brother, and when he became Muslim and I met him for the first time, I didn't know that I went to school with his brother. So the world is very small, and
Yes.
Islam brings us together.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's a very small world. Okay. But yeah, definitely looking forward to that. But
Inshallah.
thank you so much, everyone,
No
for,
problem.
for listening. I'm your host, Robert, and this is Brother Asad. Assalamu alaikum wa
Right.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And stream. Yeah. Okay, it's done.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah.